So my name is Tony Corrigan, and I have I unfortunately stumbled into the circle of hell that is tendering about 15 years ago, accidentally. But once you get in, it is very hard to get out. And I've spent the last 15 years trying to figure out ways of making it easier. So I've gone through a variety of technology companies, and I guess 2 years ago, as AI became an emerging force in the world of tendering, I decided to focus on that. And what I'll talk about today is a couple of things. Let's see if I can get onto the actual next slide there. Okay, so for people that aren't tendering, the market opportunity, and I suppose some of the facts and myths around it, some of the things that the government has been doing to encourage tendering, and then I'll go through the process, how they're evaluated, and I guess how they're evaluated nowadays as opposed to even how they were evaluated a couple of years ago, qualifying bids and strategies to win more tenders, and I'll focus mainly. There's a lot of items here, but I'll focus mainly on AI and its role in writing tenders. Okay, so first off, in Ireland, about 20 billion euro a year is spent by governments on various things, and about a third of that goes through e-tenders, and the rest is below threshold. And I'll explain what that is in just a minute. But it's a huge opportunity, and if you're not tendering, you're really missing a trick. And I think there's an increased propensity for government organizations to buy through a procurement process now because there's compliance and audits, and they need to make sure that they're accounting for whatever it is that they're spending. In fact, a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last year has been helping public sector buyers become audit ready so that they're buying in a manner that is transparent and delivers value for money to the government. But it's a huge opportunity, and just some kind of like some of the mad things really about it, I suppose. Less than 10% of businesses actually tender. And I would say in any given year, only about 3% of businesses tender. So in Ireland, there's about 7,000 tenders a year. There's 330,000 businesses. And of the 7,000, I would say if there's 3,000, 4,000 companies tendering in a whole year across all the sectors, that's basically the size of it. So very few companies actually tender. Um, One of the reasons is because they feel it's expensive, and I suppose the right cost of compiling a proposal is between 1% and 3% of the contract value. Now, you'll often find companies that are doing this on a sporadic basis, they'll spend up to 25% of the contract value writing their proposal. And just because if they're a small business and they have to do it themselves, they often see that as some cost that they're, or cost neutral because they're doing it at night or they're doing it in their spare time. But if you're spending time writing proposals, that's time that you're not spending growing your business. So it's important to get the right balance. And then just, I suppose, a little bit of encouragement. 25% of competitions only receive a single submission. So of those 7,000 that appear on e-tenders, quarter of them will only receive a single submission. And even more concerning, I suppose, 10% of them will not receive any submission at all. So 700 proposals each year go up in e-tenders and nobody bids for them. So it's often a lot less competitive than you might think it is. Um, so when companies come to me and they're saying, "Oh, well, why are we losing tenders?" Well, the first is timing. It's because they're not ready to go, and they're starting too late in the process. Or often I'll get somebody coming to me saying, "Can you help with the tender? It's due next week," and they've had 3 or 4 weeks to do it, and they're kind of rushing to get everything done in the last minute. And like even at the moment, I'm doing a tender. It's due in about 4 weeks. I have done about 90% of it, and I know I will spend the next 2 weeks trying to get the remaining 10% from the customer. The second bit is information. Very often these tenders just appear out of nowhere, and it's very difficult to know, well, who else is likely to go for it? Is there somebody that they're just going to give it to anyway? What's the threshold for turnover? And I suppose more importantly, what type of company do they actually want to award the contract to? And do I look like that type of company? And then the last one, credibility. If they, and I would say this was really important a few years ago that buyers would know who you were or that you'd have some relationship with them. But I've been evaluating a lot of tenders over the last year, and I would say 85, 90% of the bids that are coming in from small companies that nobody has ever heard of before. And that's typical around an evaluation table because people, I mean, you mentioned beauty products earlier. Most people who are involved in that purchasing decision, they would not have any particular expertise in that area. They're buying beauty products one day, they're buying science supplies the next day, and they've no particular expertise and they wouldn't know the companies in any of those areas. Um, you don't lose on cost either. Again, there's a bit of a myth that, the most expensive or the cheapest bid always wins. That's not the case at all. It's the best value for money bid that typically wins. I would rarely see somebody lose on the basis of cost alone. If and in fact, it would be truer to say that if everything else is right but your cost is wrong, there are ways around that. So don't ever think you're losing on the basis of cost or that you're too expensive. And to be honest, almost every company that I work with about 200 companies on a regular basis, and all of them tell me that they're the most expensive in their sector, and they're not. Most companies cost about they have the same cost models, so it's not cost that you're losing on. It's maybe an inability to price the bid correctly, but it's not that you're too expensive. You don't lose on bias either. Increasingly, it's the case that evaluators just don't care really who they award the contract to. The relationships that would have been important a few years ago, and this kind of goes on to the third one. Um, I guess with the rise of AI, with the outcome of COVID, it's increased, and I guess changing demographics, it's increasingly the case that the evaluation teams have relatively little market knowledge, very relatively little interest in building a relationship with you, and it's really just all about the document. Okay. And if anyone has any questions as we go through, just feel free to put them in the chat or just interrupt. Okay, so if you are doing proposals, a winning score is about 93%. Most score 60 to 70%. And with AI, most proposals nowadays are scoring 70 to 80%. But it's important to know that a winning tender scores more than what AI can deliver. And it's something around 93%. Um, Again, just the average win rate of somebody tendering is between 10 and 30%. You need to be winning about a quarter of them to be breaking even on the process. So again, sometimes, if somebody comes to me and asks, should I be tendering at all? You probably need to be have that expectation and have that built into your costs that you're likely to you need to win one in four. And if you're winning less than that, it's probably costing you more money than it's earning you to actually be involved in tendering. And anybody who does have experience and expertise and training, just shout out now. But generally speaking, nobody or incredibly few. I think in Ireland there's something like 34 qualified APMP qualified bid writers. APMP is the qualification for bid writing or proposals. Most people don't have it. Most people um, fall into having to write proposals because that's the size of their business, or they've just been assigned that because they're in sales or marketing. Okay, so I think the biggest challenge really, I'll just do this one a bit quicker. The biggest challenge, I guess, is that suppliers tend not to know what a good, better, or best submission looks like, and they don't know really why they win or lose. Now, one of the problems here is that tenders, like there's 7,000 tenders on e-tenders. They're all different to each other. You can be buying the same. I mean, if you take the ETBs, for example, if they were ordering school supplies, they would be doing it in different ways across each ETB, even though it's the same thing that they're looking for all the time. Um, the the requirements are becoming increasingly complex, and part of that is in response to the increased use of AI. So I'll talk about that a little bit more as I get deeper into this. And again, suppliers typically have no tendering tools or processes. So whenever a tender comes along, they're essentially starting from scratch each time, or they're copying the last proposal that they've done and trying to reshape it around the new requirement. And that tends not to be the best or the most efficient way to do it. Um, if you are not already, you do need to be on the eTenders portal. So this is where it's etenders.gov.ie. That's where all of the tenders above €50,000 are published. It's not just for finding tenders. Anybody who I'll have my email at the end of this. Anybody who needs help getting set up in this and getting the right email alerts, just drop me a mail. I'll be happy to do that for you. But any tenders that are above €50,000, they must appear here by law, and that's about a third of the €20 billion that's spent each year. The other 13 or so billion, that is spent below threshold. So that's contracts below €50,000. And again, if you're a small business and you're just trying to build credibility and track record in the public sector, the best way to do it is in below threshold contracts where you just have to provide a quote or a small tender document to and it's just given out to invited suppliers rather than going on to e-tenders where everybody can actually see it. So make sure you register there. Um, so yeah, so for contracts between 5 and €50,000, so below €5,000, essentially it's just whatever the buying organization has as an internal process. But between 5 and 50,000, they can either ask you to respond to a written specification, which can be as simple as an email. I just did one yesterday for somebody who wants help in writing a tender, and it was as simple as a one paragraph email and asking me to give them a price for it. It can be as simple as that. Again, it can be, but I think it's important to know that each time a buyer does that, they need to send it to three companies. So it's important to ask actually as well whether they have any intention of awarding it to you, all else being equal, or whether they're just using you to get them up to the three quote limit. And then if it's a more formal tendering process, they can advertise it on e-tenders. So you can advertise on e-tenders if it's below €50,000, but it tends to cost money to put a tender on e-tenders. So if they can avoid doing it, they will avoid doing it. Um, and just an important note on this, if a buyer doesn't know that you exist, then they can't invite you to respond. So if there is somebody that you want to sell to, it is a good idea to let them know that you exist and to ask them for these contracts below €50,000 because it is just cheaper for them. I've just done a tender for somebody in the public sector, and it was a pretty simple tender, and I charged them over €5,000 to run the process for them. And if they can avoid spending that, they will avoid spending that. So knowing when to bid and when not to bid, because of all those thousands of proposals, which ones are the right ones for you? So I won't go through this in any particular detail, but this is a bid, no bid scoring matrix where these things like the solution that you offer, the level of competition, the originality of your proposal, whether you can meet their timescales, whether the size of the your previous examples and case studies are the similar size to what this particular contract is, whether it's the right price, whether the person doing the buying has the authority to make the purchase, because that's not always the case, and whether they actually have a need to actually go through with this purchase. All of that kind of feeds into a bid no bid decision. And I will be happy to show people afterwards if they like, but typically I would do this now using AI. So you can create prompts where you can provide it with the RFP, you can provide it with some of your previous material, and you can ask it whether you should bid or not bid for the contract. It's probably not quite as trivial as I'm just saying it there, but increasingly, I guess that's something that I would probably do 3 or 4 times a day for various customers. When they see an opportunity, they don't know if they should go for it. So we look at the competition. The most important thing to look at, I think, is the contracts that you've previously done and whether they match what they are currently looking for this time. And once all that is equal, you just need to look and see how long it's going to take you to write the proposal, and again, whether there's value for money in actually going through the process. But that's the bid no bid. So it's really important to do that before you decide to write a proposal. And again, if anybody after this is thinking of writing or responding to a tender, this is the kind of thing that it just takes me 10 minutes to do. So I'll be happy to do it for you and show you how it works. So this is the process. And this is from your perspective. So you find opportunities on e-tenders, you need to register your interest, then read the documentation and qualify the opportunity doing that bid no bid. There is an opportunity if there's something that you don't understand to submit through a messaging app on the e-tenders platform any uh, queries or requests for clarification that you might have, bearing in mind that everybody can see your question and the answer, although they cannot see who submitted the original question. So do be a little bit careful when you are using that tool, because sometimes you can give away your competitive advantages just by asking questions. Then plan your response. Make sure you know you have enough time to do it. Write the response, ideally using AI. Submit your proposal. You'll get the results. It typically takes about 6 weeks for a tender to be evaluated. You get your results, and really importantly, whether you win or lose, you are entitled to a debrief where you can go and meet the buyer and they will explain to you why you didn't win the competition, if that's the case. Or if you did win the competition, you can just ask them for more clarity around aspects of your proposal that they would prefer were done a little bit differently. And that's really important if you're going to have a longer term relationship with them. But if you do lose, you get that debrief. That's valuable. That's gold insights into how your business is viewed by public sector buyers. And because each tender is like an exam, you can simply go ahead and make those changes to your proposal for the next time. So after 2 or 3 proposals, you really should be winning, and you really should be winning at least 1 in 4, probably 2 or more in 4. So what buyers are looking for, they're looking for credibility. So they want well-constructed proposals that give them confidence that you can actually deliver. So that does mean no spelling mistakes. It does mean answering the questions and being focused and not having lots of filler content. They need to know that you understand what it is that they're looking for. So it's always critical to, especially in your case studies, for example, to draw out the similarity between what you've done before and what you understand that they're looking for this time. That's probably the number one decision-making criteria. It needs to be relevant. So answer the questions and don't have filler, give short, precise answers. And that's something that AI does not do very well. So I'll come on to that in a minute. And then make sure it's value for money. So, don't offer them Rolls-Royce solutions if they don't have Rolls-Royce money. So make sure that whatever the solution is, your that matches their budget. And bear in mind, once you're in the door, there is a mechanism whereby they can increase the value of the contract. So don't rule yourself out early on in the process just because you're trying to get all of the money up front. Okay, so again, if you want to win in 6 months, it's as simple as, make sure you know what you're competing for, make sure you've prepared your content, your case studies, your CVs, and that all of that is in good shape. Benchmark your competitiveness, and the easiest way to do that is to actually compete for tenders, because you get your feedback, you get the winner's feedback, so you'll be able to see exactly how well you're performing against your competitors, and then simply improve on those by doing more tenders. And then after about 5 months, you should be competing in a meaningful way with an expectation of being successful, and then just carry on with that. And I guess if I was to look at my most successful customers, and they would be in sectors like legal services, audiovisual supplies, electrical vehicle chargers. Um, they, I'm thinking of 3 or 4 customers that they're competing every month. So they're doing, 12 to 20 tenders in a year. And each time they do one, it's taking the feedback and it's improving and improving all the time. And the improvements that they're making now, they're only 1 or 2% maybe, but these are the 1 or 2% that differentiate you and the difference between winning and losing. So how is tender evaluated? Okay, so I'm just going to give you an example here, and this will segue into the AI part of the discussion. So a typical question would be something like, please outline the team you've selected in order to deliver the project at the lowest level of risk possible. And this is a 60% answer or less than 60% answer. So we employ 50% of 50 people in our business and will resource the project based on availability. That's and below 60% is typically a fail. So that's what that looks like. A 60 to 70% answer, which is what I would have expected to see in the pre-AI days. Our project team will have 6 professionals led by a project manager with over 20 years experience in similar projects, and they will manage carefully and diligently in order to deliver the project at the lowest level of risk possible. So essentially mirroring back their request. Not good enough to win, barely good enough to pass. This is the kind of thing that I'd expect with AI if you gave it a bit of information, something with 80 to 90%. So it'll identify a person, which lowers the risk on the buyer. There's better understanding. It explains what, in this case, Sharon Keogh has done for similar clients. It explains what her team will be responsible for, and it gives an example of something that she has recently done that is relevant to them. So you can sort of see that's an 80 to 90% answer. Most people would not have done that without AI, but even with AI, that's just not good enough to win. The one on the right is what is good enough to win. It does everything that the 80 to 90% one does, but it also provides an insight into why this is important for the buyer. So we know how important quality, the last paragraph there, is to maintaining your reputation and credibility, and it offers some additional value. We will conduct a risk audit with you as well as ensuring we minimize the risk of the project. So that's I guess the anatomy of what a really good answer looks like compared to what most people will typically do. And while I'm showing you this now, I can show you this because I've been involved in thousands of proposals. But if you're only doing 1 or 2, you don't really know what the right answer is or what the best answer is. And it's only something you can learn by actually doing it. And I suppose importantly, AI doesn't know how to do it. So it's just something that you have to learn by actually doing. Okay, so let's get on to AI then. And what I'd say about AI is it's an accelerant. It helps you to do things faster, but it's not a strategist because winning really depends on insight, judgment, and tailored value. So where AI delivers real value, and I should preface this, we did a survey a few weeks ago on LinkedIn, and about a third, well, about 2/3 of people are using AI in their proposals today, and the other third intend to. Of the 2/3 that are using it, it pretty much splits down half and half. Half are winning with AI, and half are losing with AI. The difference is, well, what is AI actually good for? So what it is good for is for structuring responses clearly. So you can, for example, take the RFP, the request for tender, and you can ask AI to set out what the answer structure should be. Rather than having to figure it out yourself, it'll do it for you. So that's something that you can actually do. It's pretty good for generating first drafts. So it can take the questions and it can generate its ideas as to what the first drafts might be. Typically, they are appalling, but it's sometimes appalling is better than looking at a blank page and having to fill it out yourself. But don't think that AI will actually write the tender for you, but it will generate a first draft. And again, in my experience, getting that first draft can often take up to 60% of the effort in putting a proposal together. So if you can get AI to do it for you in a couple of hours, well, then you've saved 60% of the time involved. It's useful for things like tone and clarity. So one of the areas in writing a proposal, especially if there's a couple of people doing it, they all have different writing styles, and that doesn't come across very well from the evaluator's point of view. But with AI, you can just put all the content through the AI tool and it will all come out in the same tone and clarity. You just need to make sure that you give it some guidance so that it doesn't come over too happy, which is what its default setting is. They'll give you consistency across large proposals. And again, like some tenders are 20 pages long, some are a couple of hundred pages long. So it'll give you that consistency across them. And it's also very good at, quickly creating summaries and tables. You can give it your content and ask it to summarize a section and use that maybe as an introductory paragraph or something like that. It's also good for taking content and reformatting it into bulleted lists or tables or things like that. So you'll see that all the areas where AI delivers real value, it's in the manipulation of words. Okay. Now, where AI does not really offer value is, and I suppose the preface to this is all of the AI models have been trained on publicly available data. And the one bit of data that is not publicly available are proposals, because proposals are, well, first of all, they're proprietary. They go into the buying organizations and they disappear once the contract is awarded to somebody. So AI does not know what a winning tender looks like. And there are some tools out there that where allow you to that where you can populate that tool with your proposals, but your proposals probably aren't brilliant either. And it's not great if you're trying to train the AI to write proposals based on content that isn't great in the first place. And because of the proprietary nature of proposals and the confidentiality, it's very difficult for any tool to be able to say, well, I know what the right answer is and I can write it for you. So things that it can't do, it can't identify win themes or value propositions. It all kind of looks the same to it. It doesn't know what your market's position or your strengths are or what the buyer's strategic goals are. It only knows what data that you've provided it with. It also lacks buyer context. So it doesn't know why the buyer is buying now as opposed to in 6 months' time. It doesn't know why the budget is 100,000 euro rather than 50,000 euro. It doesn't understand the culture. It doesn't understand what the client really cares about. Again, it's just looking at the document. And very often, I mean, in my case, I will often get contracted by a buyer to write the document for them. So all of the context can be stripped out of a document like that. So it has no access to real world proof. It can't really reference your actual outcomes or testimonials or your financial impact. Only you can really do that by interpreting your own information. It also can't judge what not to say. If you ask AI to provide 1,000 words for as an answer for something, it'll just provide 1,000 words, and it won't tell you, which 500 words are really impactful and which 500 words are less impactful. So sometimes, it's strategic editing and emphasis and what you should take out, that requires a certain level of human judgment, or what this would often be called in the latest jargon is human in the loop. So you use AI, but you have a human to do the things that AI can't. And it doesn't understand really what earns top marks. So it isn't trained, as I said, on winning bids, and it replicates tone and not performance. And I guess one of the things that I see when I'm evaluating proposals now is that they're nearly all written by AI, and they nearly all look the same because everybody's using the same tools and they're getting the same sort of answers out of them, and they're just throwing them into their proposals. So everybody's getting more comprehensive answers, more aligned answers, but they're not particularly better answers. And I suppose most importantly, they're not winning answers. So while the scores have kind of gone from 60 to 70% to 80 to 90%, um, you need to be getting over 90% to be winning a contract. And to get over 90%, you need to have alignment with the buyers, what they really care about, win themes and value propositions. And those are the things that AI just isn't great at. So one of the things that I've done to fix this is I've created a tool which analyzes proposals. So if people give me their proposals, I have a series of lenses that I put over the proposal. So things like how aligned it is with the buyer's needs, how a bid evaluator would likely evaluate it, what's missing from it, a red team lens or a blue team lens. There's 9 different filters that you can put over a proposal to determine its quality. So what I'll do is I'll do that for my customers and generate a report that's very actionable. So I'll tell them exactly what they're going to score in each section and what they can do to improve their score. So let me just stop there.